By multiplying and dividing, we're going to multiply and divide decimals and fractions. So to begin with decimals, let's take a look. Find each product. So we're going to multiply. For right now, let me ignore the decimal point. Let me ignore the signs. I'm just looking at this as 25 times 53. So let me create a 2 by 2 box. I'm going to go 25 times 53. Let me cut each of my squares in half. So for each of my numbers, each of my squares, I multiply the number on the top times the number at the side. So my first square, it says 2 times 5. That's 10. Then 5 times 5, that gives me 25. 2 times 3, that gives me 6. And 5 times 3, that gives me 15. Now I'm going to be adding my rows. The first row on the very far right is just 5. The second row, let me add my digits. 5 plus 1 plus 6, that's 12. So write down the 2, carry down the 10. Now let me add my digits. 1 plus 2 plus 0 plus 0. So 1 plus 2, that's 3. And then 1. So digits wise is 1, 3, 2, 5. When it comes to the sign, I'm going to say my answer is negative because my numbers to begin with had different signs. One of them was negative, the other one was positive. Now when it comes to the decimal point, I'm going to count the decimal places. My first number has one decimal place. And remember, decimal place is how many numbers after the decimal point. My second number has one decimal place. 1 and 1 combined is 2. So my result, my answer should have 2 decimal places. And that's my answer, negative 13.25. Taking a look at number 10, I'm going to multiply 84 times 6. For that, let me do a 2 by 1 box, 84 times 6. Let me cut each of my squares in half. For my first squared, I'm looking at 8 times 6. That's 48. The second square, I'm looking at 4 times 6. That's 24. On the very far right, my first number is 4. Now let me add my digits. 8 plus 2, that's 10. Carry down the 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. So digits wise is 504. When it comes to the sign, is negative because my signs were different. When it comes to decimal place, I only have one decimal place on my numbers. So my result should only have one decimal place. And my answer is negative 50.4. Now let's take a look at multiplication. In multiplication, my fractions should only have a number on the top and a number at the bottom. If I see a mixed number, I'm going to multiply it, in this case, 2 times 4. And then I'm going to add that to the top. So let me call this 9 over 4 times 13 over 9. Simplify if possible. What I mean with simplify is I'm going to choose a number from the top and a number from the bottom. They could be from the same fraction or different fractions. And I'm going to divide each of them by the same thing. Notice I cross them out. Those are the numbers I'm going to simplify. In this case, let me divide each by 9. Right, 9 divided by 9 is 1. 9 divided by 9 again is 1. Now, if I multiply my numbers on the top, I happen to have 13. If I multiply my numbers at the bottom, I have 4. If my number on the top was bigger, that would be nice. The number on the top was smaller, that would be nice. Because it is bigger, I have to divide. I'm going to go 13 divided by 4. Then I ask myself, how many times does 4 go into 13 without going over? Then I'm going to say, well, 3. Right? 3 times 4 is 12. When I subtract this, my remainder is 1. So my fraction is going to be 1 over 4. When it comes to the signs, my answer will be positive because the two numbers given at the beginning were negative, right? They were both the same sign. So my answer would be 3 1/4. Don't forget that on my homework, when you're typing this, don't forget to type a space between the whole number and the fraction. So 3 space 1/4. Notice for the fraction, I'm using the backslash. All right, let's take a look at question number 12. It must be a fraction, so I'm looking at the first fraction as 7 over 1. Make it a fraction if it's not. I'm going to multiply this by 1/3. Simplify if you can. In this case, I cannot. If I multiply my numbers on the top, I get 7. If I multiply my numbers at the bottom, I get 3. My number on the top is bigger, so let me go 7 divided by 3. Right? 3 goes into 7 2 times. 3 times 2 is 6. When I subtract this, my remainder is 1. So I'm going to have 1/3. When it comes to the signs, my answer is negative because the numbers at the beginning were different signs. So my answer is -2 and 1/3. My case for the homework, don't forget to type in a space after the 2. Now division. Let's take a look at division. My second number should not have a decimal point. If it does, then move the decimal point all the way to the right. I want to move it one place to the right, so whatever you do to one number, do it to both numbers. So I'm going to move my decimal point one space to the right on each number. So I'm looking at this as 90 divided by 12. Notice I moved the decimal point one place to the right. I ended adding an extra 0 on the first number because I needed to move it one place to the right. My goal here is the second number should not be a decimal. I don't care about the first number, just the second number cannot be a decimal. So I'm going to be looking at this as 12 divided into 90. All right, so my answer might have a decimal point, so I'm going to put it up there. Then I ask myself, how many times does 12 go into 90 without going over it? Then I'm going to say, well, 7. All right, 12 times 7 is 84. When I subtract this, my remainder is 6. After the decimal point, I have as many zeros as I need. So let me add an extra 0. Then I ask myself, how many times does 12 go into 60? Well, 5 times, because 12 times 5 is 60. When I subtract this, my remainder is 0. Once I have a remainder 0, that's when I stop. And my answer will be 7.5. I'm going to keep it as positive since the numbers at the beginning were the same sign. Now let's take a look at question number 14. Move the decimal place one place to the right because my second number should not be a decimal. So I'm looking at this as 30 divided by 24. So let's take a look. How many times does 24 go into 30? I'm going to put my decimal point, and I have a decimal point in my answer. So then I ask myself, how many times does 24 go into 30? And I'm going to say 1 time. 1 times 24 is 24. When I subtract this, I get 6. All right, let's bring an extra 0. How many times does 24 go into 60? I'm going to say 2 times. 24 times 2 is 48. When I subtract this, I get 12. All right, let me write down an extra 0. How many times does 24 go into 120? I'm going to say 5. 24 times 5 is 120. My remainder is 0, so my answer will be 1.25. I'm going to keep it as positive since the numbers at the beginning were the same sign. So 1.25. Now let's take a look at division on fractions. My first fraction, let me just write it as 1/4. Divided by my second fraction, change it so there's only a number on the top and a number at the bottom, not a mixed number. And I'm going to write 9/4. And the way I came out with the 9 is I multiplied 2 times 4, and then I add it to the top. So 9/4. And then I'm going to write this as a multiplication because I know how to multiply it, but make sure you get the reciprocal of the second fraction. Basically, flip the second fraction. So let me write this as 1/4 times 4/9. Notice I'm flipping the second fraction. All right, let's take a look. 4 and 4, I'm going to simplify. I'm going to divide each by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now, when I multiply my numbers on the top, I get 1. When I multiply my numbers at the bottom, I get 9. My number at the bottom is bigger, so I'm good. That's my answer, 1/9. I'm going to keep it as a positive since the numbers at the beginning were the same sign. Now, how am I going to type a fraction in my homework? 1/9, right? 1/9. Remember, for fractions, I use the backslash. All right, let's take a look at number 16. Let me write this as 14/3. Remember, I went 4 times 3, and then I added to the top, divided by 7/2. Once again, I went 3 times 2, I added to the top. I'm going to write this as a fraction. So I'm going to write this as 14/3 times 2/7. Remember, I change it to multiplication, and I do the reciprocal, which means flip the second fraction. Now, 7 and 14 I can simplify. I'm going to divide each by 7. 14 divided by 7 is 2. 7 divided by 7 is 1. When I multiply my numbers on the top, I have a 4. When I multiply my numbers at the bottom, I have a 3. Because my number at the bottom is smaller, right? The big number is on top. Let me divide. 4 divided by 3. 3 goes into 4 one time. Because 1 times 3 is 3. When I subtract this, my remainder is 1. And I'm going to have 1/3. Don't forget to type in a space between the whole number and the fraction. So that's your review for multiplication and division. We're multiplying and dividing decimals and fractions.